You got to realize when you're in something like this, what you can get inspired to do, what you can learn while you're here, can literally help change people's eternities. Yes. Isn't that awesome? Yes. And so we're going to be learning a lot over these next 5 days. And I hope you're excited because you already learned possibly who uses more toilet paper between you and somebody else. You know, there was a lot of interesting stuff learned in that quick hand-raising game there. But there's going to be a lot of exciting, special, much more important than that stuff learned over these next few days. You know, my wife Chelsea and I are excited to be with you. She's going to be coming down on Sunday morning. She'll be down here with us. We live in North New Jersey, just outside of New York City. And we live there with our two amazing little boys, Bradley, who just turned 3, and Tyler, who's a little behind him. He's almost 2. And so we live there in New Jersey with them. It's amazing. This morning they both got up, came out of their beds, and they looked a hot mess. And so my wife took them to the doctor, and it turns out they both have strep and pink eye. So pray for them, because my wife's leaving them on Sunday with grandparents. So pray they get better quick. Pray for our grandparents. But it's awesome. Needless to say, life has been crazy with 2 young boys. But it is a lot of fun with them. You know, what I love is having my 2 kids grow up around the campus ministry. You know, the people coming in and out of our house, campus devos, campus midweeks, they get to be part of this amazing campus ministry family. You know, my kids love the campus ministry. This is our New Jersey, in our New York City church, we have 10 regions. This is our New Jersey region of the church campus ministry. We're 80 disciples. And, you know, I love having my kids around the campus. I'm trying to help inspire them to be world changers, to be people who turn the world upside down. So we're getting them turning the world upside down early. That's me holding my son Tyler there. This is safe. After I do this, he laughs, all right? So it's okay. So we're getting it early. That's our New Jersey campus, part of the larger New York City campus ministry. We got some New York City campus people in the house here. It's awesome to be here. You can see a common theme here, not upside down this time, but lifting them up still. This is our New York campus staff. And so we've got Steven and Hannah in the Bronx region, Chelsea and I, with Matt, Mark, and Shauna in New Jersey. And then we got Charles in the Bronx, and Leslie in Harlem, and Danielle in Queens. I just want to throw it out there right now that Shauna, Danielle, Charles, and Mark are single. And so if you need some dates, go for it. They're here. And it's so exciting to have our New York campus staff in the house this week with you guys. Now, I do want to say that I'm incredibly inspired by the work being done in the North River campus ministry here. I got to come down for 2 days of CTP back in 2013, and it's just been inspiring and faith-building to see the hard work being done here and God's Word being spread on the college campuses here. To see the growth. I just want you to know, everyone in the North River campus, that you're an inspiration and you're a model ministry for campus ministries all over the country and all over the world. And so it's an honor to be here with you. You know, the theme for these days here is Endgame. Endgame is the theme, and you know, I don't know if you saw the most recent movie, Avengers Endgame, yet or not, but it was awesome. And I'd have to say, I think the most crucial, pivotal scene in the movie was towards the end where Captain America... No, I'm just kidding. That's something I haven't seen yet. I couldn't really bring a lot of the movie here because I don't want to ruin it for you. How many of you have seen it, actually? All right, so I probably could say something. That says something. How much of us have seen that movie already? But you know, you might remember in Infinity Wars where Doctor Strange runs through some billion-something versions of how things could play out. He makes a big sacrifice and then he says, look, we're in the end game now. Basically saying it's time to go all in because we're in the end game. You know, it says we're in the end game now. Fast forward a year, and basically the whole world went to see how it ended. Humanity collectively sacrificed $1.2 billion in just the opening weekend to see how a fictional comic book story ends. $1.2 billion, breaking any record in just the first weekend. You know, we're here this weekend to get training for the real life, true, not comic book, but God's book, Endgame. Now we gotta know we have the truth. We know how it all really ends. We know how it goes down in the end. And so what are we gonna sacrifice for it? The title of my lesson tonight is We're in the Endgame Now. You can open to 2 Peter chapter 3. You know, emphasize that word now at the end. We're in the endgame now. He's acting because they're in it now, not in the future. We need to know we're in the endgame now. You know, the Bible talks about end times, last days. And biblically speaking, we are in the end times. The end times, the last days, refers to the time between when Jesus ascended and when Jesus comes back. And that's where we live right now, is in between that window. We live in the end times. In Revelation 22, verse 12, at the end of the Bible, one of the last things it says, Jesus says, "Look, I am coming soon. My reward is with me, and I will give to each person according to what they have done." Jesus ends the Bible saying, "Look, I am coming soon." It's like he's saying, look, we're in the end game now. You know, I think in life there's some people that you want to come back. There's people you say, "Hey, I'll be right back," and you want that to happen. Perhaps when you're out for dinner, out for lunch, and the waiter gives everyone else their food except you. Has that ever happened to you? And they say, "Hey, I'll be right back with your food." And you're like, "They better be right back with my food. This is struggling right here." You know, and so they say, I'll be right back. You want them to be back. You know, when you get a visitor to come out to Bible talk, to come out to church and say, "Hey, look, I'm coming back." You're like, "Yes, I want you to come back." There's other people that if they said, "I'm going to come back," you would not want that to happen. Somebody breaks into your house. You wake up, you're like, "What are you doing?" They're robbing you, and they're saying, "Guess what? I'm coming back." You don't want them to say, "I'm coming back." You know, you go to your dentist. They have some concerns. They say, "Look, you're coming back." You know, there's people, if they said, "I'm coming back," we want that. And there's people, if they said, "I'm coming back," we wouldn't want that. You know, for us, Jesus says, "I'm coming back." Come on, Rob. Jesus is coming back, and we want him to come back. Amen? Amen. Jesus promises us, "Look, I'm coming soon." Thinking this, he's comforting us with a promise. "Look, I'm coming back for you. I know you're sacrificing, you're living for a lot." He's given us this promise, "I'm coming back for you," to give us hope and encouragement. But I think in that is also a warning that gives us perspective and pushes us to make decisions for the kingdom of God and not for this world. Yeah. And so it's a promise, but it's also a warning to live the right way and to live in a way that pleases God. And that's why he said, "I will give to each person according to what they have done." We need to live according to the truth that Jesus is coming back. We need to live according to the fact that we are in the end game now. Are you living for the end game right now in your life? Now I want to read this passage in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 to 14. This is one of a few passages in the Bible that gives us a visual of what it's going to look like when Jesus comes back. And I think we need to kind of burn this into our hearts and into our minds to know this is going to happen. Yeah. Am I living for it? 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, the Bible says, "But do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise," the promise to come back, "as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire. And the earth and everything in it will be laid bare. Since everything will be destroyed in this kind of way, what kind of people ought you to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives as you look forward to the day of God and speed its coming. That day will bring about the destruction of the heavens by fire, and the elements will melt in the heat. But in keeping with his promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth, the home of righteousness. So then, dear friends, since you are looking forward to this, make every effort to be found spotless, blameless, and at peace with him. Bear in mind that our Lord's patience means salvation. You know, when Jesus comes back, it won't be as a humble baby in a manger. When he comes back, it will be with thousands of angel armies, sounding trumpets descending from heaven. He will bring salvation for his people throughout all ages. The dead will rise to join the living, and all eyes in heaven and on earth will be on our almighty King Jesus. He will demolish Satan and his demons while the whole world watches. At that moment, every knee will bow to the ground and every tongue will declare, Jesus is Lord. And those whose names are written in the book of life, he will warmly welcome into his eternal kingdom in heaven, where we will be together with him forever. I think that day will be indescribably amazing. And what we need to know is biblically, it can happen at any moment. In the middle of my sermon, it can happen. Next week, it could happen. Next year, it could happen. And what we need to realize is that when that day happens, whenever it is, being on God's side that day will mean everything. And it will be worth anything to get there. That's the end game that we need to be living for. And that's the end game that we need to be helping other people live for as well. I think grasping this future, this end game, this reality, it's meant to be life-changing. It's meant to be comforting, and it's meant to be compelling and challenging. I think in my experience, not growing up in our fellowship, growing up in another denomination, my experience is that in the world of Christendom, they can get so wrapped up in trying to predict the times of what day it's going to happen, when is it going to happen. You know, getting wrapped up in when Jesus is coming back, when Jesus literally said, no one knows. So I think what we need to focus on, instead of exactly trying to pinpoint what day is it, we need to focus more on the fact that it will happen, for encouragement and to keep us focused and righteous in how we live. You know, I do look at the New Testament, and I think we don't live in the reality that Jesus is coming back like the disciples in the New Testament did. Now, I think this, when we look at the book of Acts, I think this was a major motivation for them. Guys, Jesus is coming back soon. We got to be ready for this. You know, in Acts chapter 1, verse 10 and 11, after Jesus ascends, it says about the apostles, they were looking intently up into the sky as he was going, when suddenly 2 men dressed in white stood beside them. Men of Galilee, they said, why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you've seen him go. So they see him leave, and they're told, look, he's coming back. And that passage right there is essentially the runway for the book of Acts. The springboard for all the amazing work that the first century church did. You know, Jesus pulls them together, he commissions them, he says, go make disciples of all nations. And then he leaves with the promise, I'm coming back. And those two things certainly go hand in hand. Knowing that they were sent on this mission and knowing that he was coming back to claim his own inspired them to live with passion, sacrifice, urgency, holiness, and perseverance through some intense persecution. You know, when I think about their experience, it would make sense that they thought Jesus was coming back soon, right? So Jesus dies, and then how much time went by before he rose from the dead? 3 days. So Jesus dies, 3 days later he's back. He's with them for 40 days, not that long, and then he leaves again saying, I'm coming back. And so do you think they expected 2,000 years to go by? As each year went by, they were probably like, whoa, this is taking a little longer than we thought here. But all right, let's keep going for it, you know? You know, Paul, I think this is funny. Paul had to challenge the church in Thessalonica to go back to work. Some of the disciples were quitting their jobs because honestly, they were like, well, Jesus come back today, what's the point of going to work? You know, and honestly, we could maybe start to think that way, right? Well, why am I even going to school? Why am I doing this homework assignment? I've thought that before. You know, and so some of the disciples, they were worried about what was going to happen to the disciples who had died when Jesus came back. They're like, well, what about the brothers who have fallen asleep already? And Paul's like, all right, don't worry about them. They'll rise first, and then we'll meet with them up in the sky to meet Jesus as well. All of this tells me that they strongly assumed it was going to be soon. Right. And I think we assume it won't be soon. Yeah. To the point where how many days go by that you don't even think about it? How many months go by that you don't think about the fact Jesus could come back today? They assumed it was soon. We assume it won't be soon. Maybe because it's already been 2,000 years. So for us, we have a different perspective. Hey, it could be another 2,000 years. Now, I think from another perspective, we've got to realize, but we're also 2,000 years closer than they were. Now, the math of it is that every new day that happens, the percent chance that this day is the day is even higher than the day before. Because we're moving forward in time. And yet, we live with a decreased urgency than they did. You know, in response to this lesson, I don't think that God wants us to become fanatic conspiracy theorists, predicting dates, dropping out of school, quitting our jobs, right? But at the same time, we also can't just mindlessly act like we've got all the time in the world. The bottom line is we don't know when Jesus is coming back. But we do know He is coming back, and we do know what will happen. And knowing that, what do we need to do? Obviously, we need to live wisely. We've got to plan for the future. We've got to dream big. We've got to prepare for the long haul with our life. The Bible says, he who stands firm to the end will be saved. And so we got to be ready to be faithful for our entire lives. And to serve God, you've got to have a good job. You've got to get a good education. You should be healthy. Take good care of your body so you can serve God for 60, 70, 80 years. You've got to save money for your future. Build relationships. Dig into the Bible, mature in your faith, grow in your faith. We've got to be ready for the long haul. Right. But on the same front, we've got to be prepared for it to be today. Yeah. Living ready for it to be today. 2 Peter 3 said, since everything will be destroyed in this way, which should put some perspective on your possessions and on your life. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives as you look forward to the day of God and speed its coming. Now I want you to think about your life right now and think about how would it change you and the way that you live if you thought there was an actual chance that Jesus was coming back soon. How would that impact your life? If you thought there was an actual chance He could come back this summer, He could come back this year, would your life look a little bit more like the disciples in the Bible? Would your sacrifice, your urgency, your passion, your zeal, would it look a little bit more like what we see in the first century church? You know, if you thought there was a chance Jesus could come back this week, this summer, this year, would you even think about entertaining any thoughts of giving up on your faith? Would you even think about quitting? Whatever it was over, would you even think it was possibly worth it? You'd stay faithful. And so we need this perspective in our lives. And so if you thought there was a chance Jesus could come back soon, how would that change your attitude? How would that change your perspective? Maybe it's complaining, disappointment with certain things in the way it is in your life right now. Maybe it's discontentment with something in your life. If you thought, well, Jesus could come back soon, how would that help you with your attitude and your perspective on things in your life? Now, how would that change the way that you view and use money and possessions in your life? That's right. Now, I think we see the first century church, they prioritized their possessions in the kingdom of God. They prioritized their wealth in the kingdom of God. I'm so inspired by disciples like Barnabas who sold their property and gave all the proceeds to the contribution of the church. And you know, when you really think, man, I'm investing in an eternal kingdom, then you give sacrificially, you give generously. You go, wow, I could buy these super expensive shoes, or I could actually give 10% to contribution. You know, you start to sit down and figure out, what am I giving what God's giving me back to? What am I investing my money and my possessions in? How would it change the use of your time and your schedule? I think you would have a schedule. You would get a planner, because you go, you know what? My days matter. The way I use my week counts. I got to plan it out. I got to have some discipline. I got to have a plan here with my life. You'd start to get more purposeful. Prioritize certain things. Maybe you'd stop staying up till 2 in the morning watching Netflix or playing video games, and then be able to wake up at a decent time and have enough energy to get out on campus and do something for God. You know, you'd have more priority of your discipline, your schedule. Because Jesus could come back tomorrow. Jesus could come back today. How would that change time with your family, with your friends, relationships? Would you pay more attention to each other? Would you meet new people? You know, you view the time as precious because you don't know how much more you got. You go, wow, time with my family right now, time with my friends right now. I got to enjoy every minute of this. I think this is a big one. How would it change sin in your life? If you thought Jesus could come back today, how would that affect sin in your life? Good question, which I do think God's grace would cover us if we're living in Christ. But what do you want to be found doing when Jesus comes back? You know, when the trumpet sounds, sky opens up, Jesus is coming, riding on the clouds. What do you want to be doing? Do you want to be sleeping in or up preparing for a productive day? Do you want to be sitting on your phone looking at something impure, finding pornography, or do you want to be on your phone following up with people that you met last week? You know, do you want to be sitting there in bitterness with a brother or sister that you don't want to forgive, don't want to fellowship with or talk to anymore, or do you want to be out building one another up, forgiving one another? You know, I think if we lived in the reality that Jesus could come back at any time, we would treat sin as deadly and destructive as it actually is. And we would live spotless, holy, and blameless lives like we ought to. And so what needs to change for you to live ready for Jesus to come back?
Let's go, bro.
You know, the Bible urges us who know the end game, we who know how things are going to end, it urges us to live holy, and it says also to speed its coming. This is God is patient in coming back because he wants more people to repent and be saved when he does. And so knowing the end game, on top of all of this other stuff that I've talked about, must inspire your work on the mission. Knowing the end game must inspire your effort to get out in this world and save lost souls. If you really believe Jesus is coming back and only those whose names are written in the book of life are going to make it into heaven, that should inspire you to get out on campus and share your faith. To share your faith more off campus, in the coffee shop, at the gas station, in line in different places. Because you know Jesus could come back today, I got to give this person a chance. You'd be more urgent. You'd be more disciplined. You'd be more bold. You'd be more active and hardworking. You would not be casual with the mission. And I think sometimes we could be a little too casual. And I think sometimes for me it's a mindset of like, well, I need to be in Bible studies. I'm in a couple, so that's good. I'm doing my job. Versus a mindset of, am I trying to save people? And that needs to be our mindset, is not, am I in a Bible study, but, man, am I trying to actually save people? If you are, yes, you're in Bible studies, but there's a difference there. You know, I think a good question is, how would you want you to act if you were on the other side of the equation and Jesus could come back at any moment? If you were that person walking in the dark past you on campus, how would you want you to act if that was you? You know, we've got to extend what we've been given to others. Because we don't know how much time we have, we don't know how much time they have. There's an incredible brother in our New Jersey campus ministry named Kyrie Gilchrist. Some of you might have met him. This dude is a mission machine. Incredible heart for the lost, incredible heart for God. He became a disciple a few years ago. Charles met him on campus. We got to study the Bible with him together. When he studied the Bible, one of the people that gave him a tough time was his mom. She was religious, she was close to him, and she gave him a tough time. But Kyrie started praying for his mom very urgently. She was really poor in her health. Things weren't looking great, and so he started praying for her, for God to help her become a Christian. But he didn't just pray for her, he talked to her about it. He said, Mom, would you be willing to sit down with sisters from my church? As awkward as that is, as weird as that might sound, and kept talking to her about it. Soon, she ended up being hospitalized about a year ago. Things were looking really bad for her health. He talked to her about it again. Mom, would you be willing to have some sisters come, bring some food, pray with you? She said, sure, why not? And so some sisters came, started to reach out to her, started to visit her, bring her stuff, eventually started studying the Bible with her. Kyrie's mom is hospitalized for a while, studying the Bible, and then a bunch of us got to drive over there a few months later and watch her get baptized right there in her hospital room and become our sister in Christ. You know, she did this dance with her walker over to the baptistry. The nurses were all worried and stuff. We lowered her down in the baptistry. She got baptized. She got out of the hospital. She was at church with us. It just was an amazing thing to see God use Kyrie to reach out to his mom in this way. A couple months ago, her health took a turn for the worse. And so she went back into the hospital, and then a few days later, she ended up passing away. She passed away the day before the day she got baptized a year earlier. So now she's with God in the light, and I can't tell you how much comfort and encouragement it's brought Kyrie through this to know that she was forgiven of her sins. And I've been so inspired, Kyrie, to see that he didn't waste any time on this. He said, you know what? I don't know how much time there is. I've got to reach out to my mom. And to see her become a Christian and then go on to be with God a year later has been such an inspiring thing in our campus ministry. Now, I think understanding the end game helps us know that nothing matters more. As important as other things are, when we know the end game, we understand nothing matters more than being saved ourselves and other people being saved when Jesus comes back. Our first century brothers and sisters, they didn't just hear that Jesus was coming back and then go back to life as usual, but be a little bit more religious. They heard Jesus was coming back, and then they were on a mission. They knew Jesus was coming back, and then they wanted to rejoice with him when he did and help as many other people do that as well. So we read through the book of Acts and we see what a life looks like when it's truly lived out, believing Jesus is coming back, and that this is what really matters. Starts off on the day of Pentecost with 3,000 people baptized into Christ. And then you just see this kind of pattern throughout the book of Acts of persecution. They're arrested, they're flogged, and the numbers of disciples grew to 5,000. They're arrested, they're in prison, one of them dies, but then Paul's converted, and they start sending out church plantings. And then Paul's arrested. There's just this pattern of persecution, but also perseverance and radical growth in the church. I think a connection there is the persecution they were willing to persevere through because they knew Jesus could come back. They knew they were living for another life. And so they withstood insane persecution, preaching publicly and from house to house that Jesus is Lord, even when the ruling establishment believed that the leader of Rome, Caesar, was Lord. And so in the first century, if you were a Christian, if you were in, you were all in. Because being in literally could mean that your life was on the line. And so if you were a Christian, you were all in as a Christian. And they really believed that getting this message out mattered more than their own lives did. When we look at their lives and we're inspired by it, I think we need to follow their example. Now I'm going to read to you some of how the first century church leaders are historically recorded to have died. When we look at their lives, I think we need to be called higher and inspired by the passion and the sacrifice that they lived with to obey Jesus' great commission.
Come on, bro.
Our brother Matthew, who wrote the Gospel of Matthew, he brought the gospel to Ethiopia and was put to death by the sword. Mark proclaimed Jesus all the way to Alexandria, Egypt, where he was tied to the back of horses and then dragged through the streets until he was dead. Luke shared his faith all over the place and then was eventually hung in the city of Greece. John, during an intense wave of persecution in Rome, was thrown into a basin of boiling oil and yet miraculously survived and then was sentenced to the prison island of Patmos, where he wrote Revelation and later was freed and died in modern-day Turkey as an elder in the church. James, Jesus' brother, who led the church in Jerusalem, was arrested and commanded to deny his faith. He refused and then was thrown 100 feet down off the temple pinnacle, the same place where Satan tempted Jesus to throw himself down. When they saw that he had actually survived the 100-foot drop, they beat him to death with clubs. James, son of Zebedee, another strong leader in the Jerusalem church, he was arrested and beheaded. During his trial, James defended his faith. The Roman officer tasked with executing James was convinced of the gospel, and instead of walking to behead James, he declared Jesus as Lord and knelt beside James and was beheaded himself as well. Bartholomew, traveled to Armenia making disciples, and then was flayed to death by a whip. Andrew led people to Jesus in Greece where he was arrested. He was whipped severely by 7 soldiers, then tied to a cross rather than nailed to prolong his agony. It's reported that he stated, "I have long desired and expected this happy hour." And he preached from the cross over the next 2 days until he died. Thomas took the good news to India, where he was stabbed to death with a spear on a church planting. Jude was arrested and then refused to deny Christ and was shot to death by ours. Matthias, who was chosen to replace Judas as an apostle, was later stoned and then beheaded. Simon was sawn in half. Philip evangelized in Phrygia, where he was tortured and stoned to death. Paul was often imprisoned. He was tortured and then beheaded in Rome by the Emperor Nero. Peter was a leader in the Jerusalem church and eventually went to Rome to preach. He was arrested, tried, and crucified. However, he did not see himself worthy of being killed the same way as Jesus, so he requested to be crucified upside down. To torture him further, before they crucified him, they made him watch his wife be crucified first. As she was being dragged away to be crucified, Peter yelled to her, "Remember the Lord." Those words would give her the heart and the power to never give up her faith, but to die for him as well. These are just some of the stories of our first century brothers and sisters who put it all out there to bring God's message to the world. You know, the lives and deaths of these extraordinary men and women changed the eternal lives of millions. They changed our lives. You know, I look at them and I see, you know what? Darkness took its best shot and lost. Their lives in the first century had an incredible impact. It's estimated that by the end of the first century, there was around 1 million disciples in the world, which at the time there was about 200 million people in the world, which is a huge percentage of the population. You know, they went from 0 to 1 million disciples in their generation. It took extreme sacrifice, incredible faith, and God brought them miraculous victories. Right? They died in some pretty intense ways. And what convicts me is I think when we get to heaven, we can ask them, do you regret it? You know, do you think any of them regret it? In heaven, when you ask him that, if you could ask him, wait, was it worth it? Was it worth it to live and then to die that way? I am so confident all of them would say loudly and clearly, yes. And I wish I could have done more. You know, we got to think, what would have happened if any of them gave up or gave less? What would the second century church have looked like? Would we have a New Testament? Would there be a church today? You know, we got to look at our lives and go, man, if the first century disciples lived like we do, would the church have made it? What would it have looked like by the end of the first century? What will it look like by the end of our generation? That's up to us to decide as we follow Jesus as well. And it's going to take living like Jesus is really coming back like they did. It helped them to hold nothing back. You look at their lives and you literally had to kill them to silence them. And even then their lives spoke volumes. And that's the people God is calling us to be. Those who, man, you gotta kill me to silence me. I'm going to keep declaring the word of God no matter what, because my God is coming back for us. We've got to follow their example. You know, it's inspiring to know that the apostles were between 18 and 25 years old at the beginning of the book of Acts. You know, that's us. That's you. It was the young people God used to have an incredible impact on the world. You know, God's looking to see, man, who in here will be the Stephens, the Pauls, the Marys, the Priscillas today? Who in here is going to have that impact? What difference for God's kingdom is your life, is your death going to make? What is living for the Endgame going to look like for you? You know, I think it's easy to hold back, to settle for the status quo, to get inspired and then just to kind of go back to what it's been. To get distracted. And I think it's easy for me sometimes to say, you know what? Next time. You know, I get in campus, it's so sad, I go, well, next time. Next semester, next week. But I got to challenge myself. We need to challenge ourselves. Don't you want more out of this life? Don't you want more out of discipleship and living for God? You know, if you could just finally give God that fear, that insecurity, that apathy, that distraction, that idol, whatever it is, what could God do with your life? You know, I want to know what God wants to know. What will be the impact of this room and this generation? And none of this is meant to be out of guilt or pressure, but out of grace and out of passion. We understand how much God has done for us and the fact that He's coming back, and we want to give that to as many other people as possible. You know, we've got to remember the end game. If we forget the end game, and we think life is kind of just about today here, this world, this life, if we forget the end game and we think it's all just about here, we get distracted, we start to be discontent, we get discouraged, you could get disillusioned, or you could even get disengaged. Right? We forget the end game, we think it's just about this life, those are the things that start to slip in. You know, I can see that in my own life. And life will throw stuff at you to try to distract you, to disengage you, to challenge you, to discourage you. You know, we had our first son, Bradley, and within the first 3 months of his birth, he was hospitalized twice. And that was heavy as first-time parents. You know, the first time we were in the hospital with him, they thought he might have a brain, blood, or bone infection. And we were there for 5 days with him, getting testing, night and day. And it was a nerve-wracking time. I'd never prayed more earnestly in my life. And it was disheartening. And then a month later or so, we were back in there because they thought he might have epilepsy. And praise be to God that neither of those ended up being the case. But in those moments, it was some intense moments of what's life really about here? And understanding the fragility of life, and the temporariness of it. During that time, 2 years ago, I was dealing with some intense identity theft. I got over $20,000 of bills that somebody else had used my social security number to accrue. And so I'm on the phone dealing with this serious identity theft situation. And then out of nowhere, Chelsea's pregnant again. And we go in for our first ultrasound, and they thought that he had possibly died and stopped growing. And so there was some serious concern on the table that our second son, Tyler, only made it about a week or two and then stopped growing and wasn't living anymore. And so they weren't sure, so they put her on some supplements. Chelsea was on bed rest for weeks. And then we got to go back in, and glory be to God, he had grown, he was alive, and Tyler's a healthy, awesome 2-year-old boy now. But it was some intense moments for that month. That was about 1.5 years ago. Last year, this past fall was the most challenging time that myself and my wife have ever been through. My wife, Chelsea, she went through some postpartum related intense mental health challenges last November to about January. It was like nothing we've ever experienced before. She was like fully out of commission for a couple months. Trying to figure out what's going on, what's causing this, what's happening, seeing 5 or 6 different doctors in just those 2 months. And God's helped us learn a lot. Things are getting a lot better at this point. But for me, it was tough. I experienced some extreme anxiety for the first time in my life. I had a good weekend or so where I was like, what is this feeling? And I was like, that's anxiety. And it was tough to watch my wife go through this. I was confused. I was extremely anxious. What's amazing is I look back at all these things that happened over the last couple of years, and in all of this, I've grown closer to God, closer to my wife, closer to my kids, my friends, and my family that were there for me throughout all that. And throughout all of that, instead of forgetting the end game and thinking life is just about this situation, think all of this, God has helped me deepen my conviction that it's not about this life, because life is temporary. It's a mist and then it vanishes. Life is fragile. Our lives are fragile. As much as I want my family to be healthy, my family to live, more than that, I want my family to live forever. I want my friends to live forever. I want strangers I haven't met yet to live forever. You got to understand the fragility of life helps us understand that it's eternal life that really matters. You know, throughout all this, God helped me deepen my conviction in all of that. That that it's really about getting myself, my family, and as many others as I can to heaven. And it was amazing to God's glory. Last year, even in the midst of all that, our campus ministry had the greatest semester we've ever had before in terms of growth and people becoming Christians. And I think we need to recognize every day that we live in a fallen world. And it's not about this life, but it's about being with Jesus forever in heaven. And about us being there ourselves and helping as many other people get there as we can. You know, different things in life. You help someone become a Christian and you start to understand, wow, this really is what it's all about. Helping somebody else that you now know, instead of going to hell and not being with God and living the rest of his life without God, this person is now with God and get to spend eternity in heaven. You get to understand, man, this really is what it's all about. You know, one of the people I got to help become a Christian is Charles Delval. He's come to CTP the last 5 years. He's sitting up here in the front row. You know, the other day I'm sitting in my house having dinner with my family. My in-laws are over. We're having dinner together. And all of a sudden there's a knock on the door. And I'm like, who's that? I got a big mouthful of food. I stand up, try to finish chewing quick. And I go over to the door and I had no idea who to expect. So I go over to my door, I open it up, and Charles is just standing there like this. Which, mind you, he lives in the Bronx. I'm seeing the staff meetings and leaders meetings happen. So I'm like, Charles, he looks up at me just in tears. And he just steps in the door and just embraces me in this intense hug. I hug him back and my mind is racing. I'm like, either something terrible just happened in this guy's life or he's in serious sin or something. And he just came over here to get open and repent. I was hoping, I don't know which I was hoping, honestly. But we're just hugging for a bit. He whispers thank you in my ear and I'm like trying to understand how that fits into one of the two situations. Thank you for being ready to comfort you or help you repent, you know? And so we're hugging until he's done. I'm like, dude, do you want to step outside? So my whole family is just staring, and we step outside, and I'm like, dude, so what's going on? And he like leans back.
So dramatic.
He's like, bro, I just handed in my last paper at college. He went to school in New Jersey, so he's been commuting to fit his school. And so I'm like, oh, like it's beautiful. And then he's like, and I had to stop here because I handed in my final, and then I walked out and I walked right past the spot where you shared your faith with me on campus. And I just thought about all the things that have happened these last 5 years. How much different my life is. I don't know if I would have finished school. I don't know, and just share about. And that's why we're saying thank you. Is we get to play a part in something that special. Right. Because of God's grace, we're invited into this eternal mission of preparing ourselves and preparing other people for the end game. Yeah. You know, God lets us be part of this incredible mission to prepare people for the end game. Yeah. To keep ourselves prepared for the end game. You know, I think God's doing some amazing things throughout his movement, throughout our church, throughout the campus ministry. But in a lot of ways, I think we're really just seeing the tip of the iceberg of what God can do. Yeah. And I think the difference maker, a big difference maker, is us deciding that we're not going to assume that Jesus is never coming back. That's right. Or it's going to happen 2,000 years from now, but really living with what if Jesus could come back in my lifetime? What if Jesus could come back today? And that living with that mindset is going to help us to say, you know what, I'm never quitting, I'm never giving up, and I'm going to make sure no matter what that I'm ready. And I'm going to do whatever I can do to help as many other people get ready as I possibly can. You know, in a minute we're going to get to see someone get baptized today and be ready for the end. But we got a few special days here to build some relationships, to get inspired, to get training. And we need this training because there's a big lost world, a 7.6 billion people to save. Let's go. We've got a lot of work to do. We got to leave here believing God wants to use you, he wants to use us. And we get to decide what's the impact of our generation going to be. Let's make it amazing. Let's give extreme sacrifice, incredible faith, and have some miraculous victories living for the end game. Amen? Thank you guys.